Right, after we've done the lock, the next thing to do is the connectors. So we get the piece of connector and we draw a line along the centre like we did on the fabric strip. Right, this is 3/4 of an inch deep. So we want to go half of that. It's not 3/4 of an inch, I beg your pardon. It's 1.5 inches, so we need to go 3/4 of an inch. I've gone one step ahead of me. 3/4 of an inch in and draw a line. And then we get our good old double-sided sticky tape. Do you know, when I used to sew like 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have any of this at all. We didn't even have fancy feet for our machines. We did straight stitch and zigzag stitch. And yeah, it was amazing how much sewing has come along. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love the gadgets we can get now. Okay. Peel off your backing. Ooh. And then meet in the middle again. And then what we need to do is sew along both edges. I quickly popped to the machine and sewed along the outer edges and just trimming off the threads. And there we have both edges sewn. And then we need to divide them in half. So, using my ruler, measuring, it's 3.5 inches. So that's 1 3/4 in. That's 2 matching connector strips ready. What we do next is get your D-rings. So I've got my D-rings, and then making sure you've got the raw edges in. So put your D-ring on and then put them together. And then just clip them to keep them closed. Same with the other one. I just want to trim the threads. That's it. And clip them there. So we've got our clipped connectors, and we get one of our external main panels, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because I find it easier to do everything with a bit of double-sided sticky tape involved. So I'm going to put a small amount on the inside, a short piece on the inside. And then fold it and press. I'm just going to clamp that for a moment while I do the other one. Oh, that's a bit long, that one. A bit carried away. Get the D-ring and fold that closed. Just clamp that for a moment. And then to help while I sew it on to the main panel, put some more double-sided tape. And then, I mean, you don't have to do this. If you want to do it without the tape, by all means do. But you can't pin it. I just want to make sure it's correct. And then get your ruler. And then 1.25 inches down from the top, you want to place your seam connector, your connector there, and then do the same on the other side. I thought I cut a piece ready, but I don't think I did. Oh, I put it on there, that's why. It's already on there. Okay, and the next side again, 1.25 inches down. And then place that inwards as well. So the edge of the connector is on the edge, of the bag. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure they stay put by putting the clamp on that side whilst I quickly sew this side, and then I'll sew the other side. So both strap connectors are sewn on 6mm or a little bit less seam allowance, and the next part is to add the other part of the twist lock. And it's not so technical this time, it's just a couple of lines that you put through your fabric. So we need the pattern piece for this. Which has the guide for the twist lock. Now I normally cut them out and I haven't this time, so I will just show you. Because if I have a hole to work with, then it's much easier to mark. So there we have it, and then place your pattern piece, line it up all with the edges, and this gives you your square that you need to work within. Obviously I don't want to cut lines that big, and sometimes you can use your washer to mark a hole. And yeah, if you look, my washer, it won't fit over both. If I stretch it open, it's not going to fit near the base. This goes all the way down, so now it's a good fit. So I'm going to use those holes to work with. So measuring again, I measure everything, honestly. What is it? Measure twice, cut once. And that is so true. it's a 3/4 of an inch gap for the washers. It's 1.5 inch gap for the box that I've put. So I want to go 1/4 inch in there, 1/4 inch in there, and I should find those markings. They just sit just a little bit over. See, I normally use the washers, but because I'm not using the outer washers, I'm using one out and one in. I just need to alter it a little bit. Right, and there we have it. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put a hole there and do the same size there. And put the prongs in. Yeah, they're a good fit. So I'm just going to quickly rub out these markings because it will be more awkward to go around it with the lock inserted. So put them in. Now some people will put some Peltex on first and then put this on, and some people don't use it at all. I like to, because I just think it protects everything. So I always keep some rough pieces of Peltex that are, you know, offcuts to use, and I put a hole in one, and then keeping my fingers well out of the way, put a hole in the other one. You might have ironed your Peltex first, that's fine, you can do that. I don't iron it because I worry about it ruining the fabric because it's not meant to be ironed. So I personally don't, but if I'm using cotton or fabrics that don't mind having being ironed, then I will fuse the Peltex to them first. But you don't need to. Right, put the washers on, or the washer. Bend it down. Sometimes I use pliers because sometimes it's a bit difficult. Press down as much as it will go. Now I add another piece of Peltex here because I don't want these parts rubbing against the lining fabric and creating a hole. Now you can't really fuse it to there, so I glue it. And I put quite a good amount of glue on. And then I use, the good reason for not fusing the Peltex down on the other one is that you can actually use the underneath piece to clamp the two pieces together. And that's my little secret as to why I don't fuse necessarily. So that will be left to dry. Once that's dry, we'll be able to work with that piece. Now we want to get our back of our external main panel and the flap that we made earlier. And I've already done it, but we need to measure 2 inches down from the top and just draw a little line. And then we get the flap piece and we get our trusty double-sided tape. What I didn't show you earlier on, I made sure that this was dead straight and even. Do that anyway, but I use something which is this. It's textile colour, it's textile paint. It's for the use of leather, vinyl, suede, fabrics like that, that you're going to have the raw edge showing, which we do here. And I use this one, which is a colourless one. It's white when you put it on, which is good so you can see it. But then it dries clear and it doesn't leave any staining. It doesn't leave a shine or anything like that. It's lovely. It completely disappears. So you don't have to worry about going in the edges. I just wipe it off and that's it. But if you go around all the edges, raw edges you've got, it seals them. So it stops them ever becoming a little bit fluffy or wispy. And so on. It's really good product. It lasts forever. Doesn't take long to dry, and then you can just work away. But it is ideal for using on leather and fabrics. I got mine from Amazon. It's leather. I think I looked up for leather acrylic or something. This is actually by Jacquard Textile. For natural or synthetic products. I'm just looking, I don't really know what else you would call it. But anyway, it's a lovely product to use. Now we get our double-sided tape and put a strip along the very, very top of the flap on the back of it. The wrong side, so to speak. So you've got the right side of your flap there, turn it over, put your double-sided tape on there, and then pull the backing off. Now, you do want to make sure that you get this dead centre as well. So measure your flap, which is 9 1/8 of an inch, and this is 11 1/8 of an inch, so it's an inch either side that I want to place the flap at. So I'm just going to do a 1 inch mark either side, just to show me. And then you want to place your flap on the line, and I'm making sure that I put it on the line correctly, but I also put it on the markings correctly at the top. Before I press it down, I'm just going to measure I'm happy with where that is, and now I press it down. And then we're just going to stitch along here. It doesn't actually say how far to stitch it. I would do 1/8 of an inch. A few millimetres, 3 millimetres, something like that. 4 millimetres. But anyway, not very far. I'll stitch it and show you. Okay, I've stitched along, but I've actually done 2 lines. You can see that. I did 2 lines because I really wanted to secure the flap down, so I did them, spaced them equally apart, did 2 lines, and then you can choose to, whether you choose to or not, put some rivets on the corners, which I like to do. So I get my lovely heavy green machine, and I do like to, again, I measure everything because you want it to look accurate. So I do 1/4 millimetre in both corners from the corner of the flap, just so that I can see I'm going to have them equally spaced and placed. I'm not sure if you caught that in, but now I'm looking for my rivets. Silver rivets. I use mainly 9mm by 9mm rivets, so that the head's 9mm across and the shaft is 9mm down. I didn't quite get the hole in that. But when I have them, I do like to use the shorter shafts of 6mm, which I thought I had. But I don't have any at the moment. So I like to sort of use the right size shaft for the job. And this isn't a very thick fabric to go through. Although I didn't go through it with my press properly. So normally I would like to use a slightly shorter shaft, but it will be okay. And then place it on your green machine, making sure that you've got it in the right place, properly located. That's one with this on. And that's 2 rivets on. So there they are in place. The next job is attaching the foam to the panels, on the external panels on the inside. As I said earlier on, I don't like fusing my foam to the panels. I would rather not do that, because not all fabrics, cork and vinyl and so on, don't necessarily like being ironed at hot temperatures, and this needs a hot temperature to get it to fuse, so I don't want to do that. Now I cut it the size of the panel rather than 3/8 of an inch smaller, because I'm going to base stitch at 1/8 of an inch based all the way around until we sew them together. I'm going to do that on both pieces, and I will show you when I've done it. I have attached the foam all the way around the edges, and I've done a basting stitch. It's quite a long stitch. So when I have sewn the panels together, I can just pull the basting stitch out, which will be easy to do, and then trim the foam to the seam. I have sewn around the edge at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and the bottom. I'm just going to trim the foam out now from the seam that I can, and then we have to stitch these parts closed together, which I will show you shortly. Okay, I've trimmed around the edges and got rid of all the excess foam that I mentioned earlier. And now it's time to stitch this together. We did 1/4 of an inch seam allowance along the sides, but this, the two corners are going to be stitched at 3/8 of a seam allowance. So you want to push them together and open up the two seams, and make sure that you are joining them at the seam so that you don't have a wonky looking seam. You can clip them together, you know, however you want to. Now I use my micro stitch gun. I love it. I love my little gadgets, you may have noticed. But I start by attaching the seam pieces together. It wasn't shooting for some reason, and then get on the other side, and that way I've got 2 little clips in there that's going to keep the seam together, so I don't have the cumbersome clips in place. And you can either leave them in or take them out afterwards, it's up to you, because they're not going to be seen or felt. And this is my way of assuring that I get the seam in the right place and it doesn't slip once I put it under the machine. It's going to stay put. And I do the same on this side. Again, opening up the seams so they're laying flat. Making sure that I'm joining the seams together. I'm trying not to stab myself because this is a really sharp tool. And again on the other side. If you haven't seen this before, I got mine from Amazon in the UK. I should imagine you can get it from Amazon or similar places. And it's called micro stitch. And it's just a little gun that shoots out like the tiny tags like you get in the shops, in the clothes shops. These are tiny little ones that you get. So I've tagged both seams and I'm going to sew them at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance now. So I've sewn across at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and I made sure that the seam was laying flat when I did so. I also checked inside, which you won't be able to see, it's far too dark in there, but the seams do match up. So that's our outside prepared and done. I did trim across the excess and we just then have to turn the bag right side out and make sure when you do you push all the corners out. I'm sorry it's out of shot at the moment, but I'm having to press it against my body to push the sides out. And I saw a little stray thread there which I need to clip off. Oh, didn't need to clip it off, it came out. And there we have the exterior done. Oh, there. So the exterior is made and now it's time to make the interior.